I think he's getting something started here.
Yeah, we get your stream started for you.
Yeah, just tell me you want to change. We may have started before he got the phone going.
Yes. Let me just make sure. Are you hearing people?
Echo.
Yeah. I know what it is.
John, you need to share the presentation with them, or they already see it?
There we go. Share what?
You need to share the presentation with Curry, or they already see it?
No, they can't see it right now. We need to go like this. Share what? Oh. And I still go to the echo.
While he's doing this, we're gonna talk for about 20 minutes, and then Darcy's gonna talk for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A time. So if you have questions.
There you go. You know, going.
So we may need to introduce ourselves to Curry. I'm sorry for that little thing. We may have started before he was ready. We are Coos Beekeepers Association, and we are here to give about 20-minute talk on basic bee information. This is much shorter than what we normally give, so bear with us. Anne has already said a couple of things, and we can hit those again at the end. But if we can get back to mine, as you know, there are 2 million insects, about 20,000 bees. And when I first started beekeeping, that was a wow for me, because as a little kid, you just see a bee and bees make honey and they go to flowers and that's what they do. And to learn everything and how many there are and how it all works is absolutely phenomenal. And it's why we're passionate about what we do. And we are so happy to see you guys. And whether you choose to ever get these, choose to join the club for information, or simply grow flowers and want to help them out, that's what we're here for. So I think we're still not quite there.
Nope, broken. They complained about it actually the other day. So you'll have to use the mouse.
Oh, it was working when we started.
John, I wondered if you're viewing it in between mode.
The clicker just won't work.
It was working before.
It was working before.
But
Yes.
if you're in between mode,
Well, we can't take it out as a mode.
well, no, I don't mean turn it off, but maybe escape out.
This is probably the problem they had the other day too. Just not working in it.
So what do I need to push to?
Just anything on the clicker. You can even hit the space button. Oh,
Oh, we can both do that.
why is it not? Now it's just not working, period.
We had this all going, so to be sharing is difficult. But while we're doing that, be sure that I know y'all, I think y'all came in the same front door there. We have a lot of information out on the tables. There are a lot of fantastic handouts. Some of them are things we work in conjunction with, or they work with us and give us information with OSU, the National Honeybees, and then Research Center. And we also, we have folks, some of our mentors, some of our speakers, and through them, we develop these monthly sheets that are sent out to us. Monthly tasks that show you exactly what you should be doing in each month in theory. But as we all know here, our weather has been a little different. So we're seeing behavior in our bees that's, wow, they think it's spring, and we're a little bit scared about the freezing and things like that, but we're going with it, and they're smart. And
Oh, it went. Yay. Okay, we're gonna. Okay.
so the honeybee is the only insect that produces food consumed by humans. That's phenomenal to me. We know how important they are for
We'll just.
pollination.
We'll just use the keyboard.
This will be finished, sorry.
Okay,
So now how do we?
just hit the space bar.
Okay, we're good. So 600 species of bees in Oregon. And I just had some things I was gonna say, but I didn't wanna, we have a speaker who's gonna talk about bees as well. So as far as us, you can purchase bees, you can do that through the club if you join, we get a better price. But for us, ones that are Italians, Russians, Carnelians, those are very common for us. You can decide what temperament you like. You can decide certain things about them, and it's very funny that they do all have different temperaments, different looks. Their life cycle, the flowers that they're interested in, all of those things are very individual to them. And it's amazing what we see here in just our county. A lot of people, I have a cousin who is deathly afraid of bees, and that's what she says, bees. Most bees will not bother you unless you go into them. We do have a few that are not honeybees. If any of you have ever gotten into yellow jackets or hornets, that's no fun. But we don't have anything to do with them as far as raising them. We have to watch for yellow jackets in our hives. They are something that will go after our bees.
If sometimes people will call us up and hey, we have a swarm of bees, come get them. And about half the time they're not honey bees at all. And so it's important that if you see a swarm, you find out what kind of bee they are.
We do have a team that goes out and will get bees from your place, but nothing that isn't a honeybee. So when you call, we try to talk you through whether it's something that we can do for you or not. Why do we need them? 70 out of the top 100 food crops supply about 90% of the world's nutrition are pollinated by bees. So our fruits, our almonds, our cranberry, well, they don't enjoy the cranberries as much as they used to because of certain things, but everything that you walk through the grocery store in the middle section of Safeway, they've probably had a hand in. And they are, without them, we're not going to make it. And that's what people are not understanding. We are dependent on them.
The part of it's the big agriculture. They can get pollinated by native pollinators, but their production goes down. And if they bring honeybees in, their production goes up.
And some of our club members do actually, they'll take them to the blueberries. There's several of the farms around here that use our bees. It takes a lot of hives in most areas, but for most of us, even in our yards, our apple trees, what we've got going. And there's a list, and it's long. Fruits, vegetables, field crops, alfalfa, especially around our area. So 3, the queen, there's 1. She lays up to, I think it's 1,500 eggs in a 24-hour period. That is her only job. The workers do everything, and they have different jobs through their life cycle. Drones, no insult, but these are just guys that their only job is to, at a certain point, take care of the queen, and then they do nothing.
To add to that, there's about 50,000 bees in one hive. So it's a lot of bees. The honey or we're skipping the whole part about the colony, which is how to do beekeeping, because we don't have like 4 hours of time. We're going straight to challenges. I guess I need to be on top of this. There is a decline in honeybees. In last year, 62% of commercial beekeeping companies lost that many hives, 62% of their hives. And it took almost a year to come to the conclusion that it was a treatment called Apivar that the mites had grown resistant to. And that's a whole like 4-hour discussion. But a few years ago, it was after COVID, some researchers from Minnesota were trying to decide if native honeybee or if native bees and honeybees, if there was a conflict between them. And so they got a big parcel of land in Colorado on public land, and they had all these studies and trying to figure that out. And what they figured out was it was humans decreasing bee pastures that caused a decrease in native pollinators. And it wasn't, and it was humans, their activities were ATVs, camping, livestock, sheep, cattle grazing, that sort of thing, just narrowing the bee pasture. And the native bees and the honeybees, there was not a conflict between them. And they actually said, when one species suffered, all species suffered. So you have to ask yourself, why are they dying? If you're a backyard beekeeper or if you're a sideliner, you'll say death by beekeeper, and that's so true. Bees are considered livestock in Oregon, and as an owner of livestock, you need to provide food, shelter, and healthcare. And if you don't do that, you're not doing your job. If you have backyard chickens, you know, if the weather's terrible and it's cold, you give them shelter. If they get mites or a virus, you treat them. If they don't have enough food, you feed them. Bees are exactly the same way. Oh, go ahead. The thing that is causing a lot of destruction among colonies is called the Varroa mite. And it was introduced in the United States in the late 1980s. It got to Oregon in the 90s. And it doesn't necessarily kill bees itself, although it can. What it does is it brings in viruses and diseases into the hives. You can do a variety of different pest management plans. Some people do treatment, some people want to do treatment-free. Treatment-free doesn't mean that you get to just let them go. You still have to have a plan to manage those mites, otherwise you'll kill the hive. So, oh, forgot about that slide. Some of the viruses that they bring in are deformed wing virus, European foul brood, those kinds of things. The Oregon State has a research lab called the Honeybee Research Lab. And they do a lot of testing on mites and what treatments are effective and which ones aren't. When you have a beehive, part of my treatment plan is I need to test, see how many mites are in the hive. And you would put a sticky board. You can buy an expensive sticky board, but this is like a plastic corrugated fence or yard sign that I cut to the right size, and you put it under the hive where if there are mites on the bees, you know, they fall off sometimes. And if you spray it with oil, like oven, you know, from the kitchen, they'll stick to it. And that's why it's called a sticky board. And you can count to see how many how many mites fall off. And or you can use an alcohol wash where you put alcohol in here and you put 300 bees, which is about half a cup, and it kills them. But 50,000 bees versus 300 bees in a dead hive. I don't do this all the time, but I do it. You shake it, and then the bees stay in the little cup and the mites will fall to the bottom, and you can count how many mites and do a percentage of how many mites you've got in your hive. If you have a high mite count, like if I had more than 3 in that alcohol wash, I'd be going, oh my God, I need to do something. Because if you don't stay on top of it, you'll lose your hive.
So getting into beekeeping, The easiest way is either to get a swarm, lure some to you, or purchase a package. And when you make that commitment, which is now probably about 190 this year, maybe for 180, they sell them in 2 pound, 3 pound, 4 pound, and 3 pound I think is about 10,000 bees. You can get a nuke, which is a starter of bees, and a queen that's with them. So that's the easy way. So when you make that commitment, you really want them to survive. And in addition to the Varroa, which has taken for me, I have only 2 hives usually every year, and I tend to lose 1. That's a really high loss. And a lot of it is my fault as a beekeeper, but there are so many things that are affecting them. The mite is one. Pesticides are taking a terrible toll on our bees, both just in your own area and as an industry, the amount they use. My mom knows I keep bees, but she loves Roundup, and I can't get her to understand that it goes way farther than people think. My neighbor brings in a company to spray for spiders and bugs, and she was so happy that she was using one of those companies that says this won't hurt anything. Well, I thought, okay, that's fine. I can't stop her anyway. It's her house. But it turns out that those affect them as well, because the proteins in what they use are so high that it does affect the bees.
And bees will travel up to 5 to 6 miles to
Yeah.
forage. So it's a community effort.
Weather. A wet bee is a dead bee. Here, that sounds awful because what do we have all the time but rain? You set your hive up, you want it to be in the sun first thing in the morning, get them going. They don't come out normally until about 55 degrees. That's pretty standard. So there's good and bad about Coos County. We're pretty temperate. We don't get really hot, we don't get really cold. But that almost makes it harder because a lot of places people get to kind of put their bees to bed with the medications they needed, the extra food they needed, they close them up and winter hits and they really don't have to do much until spring. We kind of have to keep an eye on them because they will come out, they will fly, they go on routes and just check things out. But if things are really going like they are now, we had how many days of hot weather for us and during this time, and they think it's spring. My bees have been out and about coming back with giant clumps of myrtle wood pollen, just bright orange and having a great time. So we have issues of needing to pay more attention. You need to tip your hive. Rain can come in, that'll get them. There's so many issues. Loss of forage, like Ann was talking about, we're losing areas, just the amount of growth, people building buildings and taking away what was flowers. So the more things we can do to help them, the better we are. The fields that used to grow, you know, and now they're talking about the GMO, corn, everything that's grown industrial in the big, in states that used to just have natural things are poisoning them. Alfalfa for us is a big one because my husband and I have cattle as well, and our alfalfa comes out of like Northern California, and it's amazing sometimes what's in it that we don't realize. Oh, other pests. Yellow jackets will go after our bees. You can see it on a day when they're around our hives. You kind of have to do something. You're either really out there trying to kill them, because a yellow jacket can take out a honeybee. They will just kind of knock them to the ground, or a bunch of them will go after them. They are a threat, and that for me is the biggest one, yellow jackets. But wasps, hornets, they're always after them. They're interested in not just their food, but them themselves. Other diseases, she mentioned American foul brood, European foul brood. There's a lot of things that will get them if you really keep track. These are things that if you catch early, sometimes if you don't catch it early enough and you can pull a panel of bees out and you see it and wow, it's not really gotten started, you can save them. If it's really throughout, there are some of these diseases you have to destroy your hive. You have to burn your equipment. They're so bad that it will remain on there. The small hive beetle, we see that once in a while. I've been lucky, you know, but not too bad here. Bears. We do have bears. I believe Ann has had her hives up the river sometimes. We've had a few people where they get into them. Mine, I have a hive here in town, and I have one on our ranch. And I've kind of waited. I've been really lucky because it's near an orchard that we've had bears, but it's one of those things that if they get to them, this really is realistic of what they will do to a hive. Winnie the Pooh, they are not. So
Electric fences are the best, or caging
Yeah.
them in.
yep.
Oh, this slide was just out of order. I just want to say that when it comes to treatments, if you have these and you choose to, there are always new treatments, and Apivar is actually on this list. This PowerPoint's several years old, and we would eliminate that because it's become mite resistant. And it changes all the time. You need to stay on top of what treatment you use, what the weather is. Some treatments you can't use when it's too hot or too cold. You need to know if it's safe to have the supers on. The supers are the boxes that have honey in them, because you don't want the chemicals in your honey. There's just a lot of information you need to know when it comes to the treatments.
Which is a good thing about the club. We will help you with that, but there is a lot of information online, everywhere.
And what can you do to help? Of course, those things, but support your local beekeepers by buying raw, unfiltered local honey. Educate folks on pollinators, not just honeybees, but all pollinators. It's kind of like a swarm. My neighbors freaked out when my bees swarmed, but that's really just how the hive, the colony reproduces. The old queen takes about half the bees fill up on honey, and they take off and find a new home. And when you have 25,000 bees flying around, it's kind of shocking. So I know why people freak out, but if you educate them, the bees are very docile at that time because they're heavy with honey and they're just looking for a new home. They're not interested in you at all. And then the mother hive, they grow a new queen and continue on with their hives. That's their reproductive cycle, I guess. Oh, we can skip that. If you're a student here at SWOCC, you can join Beekeepers for free, which is kind of exciting. Go ahead. And these are some of the topics that we didn't get to, which is more the how-to of beekeeping. We just don't have time to get into that today. One of the big things that I realized once I got these was the question I didn't even know for myself. Why do you want to have bees? Do you want it for honey? Are you trying to save pollinators? If that's what if you're trying to save the bees, being a beekeeper isn't doing that. You want to save the native pollinators. Honeybees, sure that we have colony losses at times, but we're not endangered or anything like that. I find personally that they're extremely relaxing. In the summer, I'll put my lawn chair out with a drink and just watch them. It's very relaxing. That's it.
Yeah, we have come to the end, but we didn't talk about equipment, really. We didn't talk about costs. We have a lot of information. If you join the club, you know, we have equipment that we loan out to people because some of it is very expensive to buy on your own, especially if you don't only have one hive. You certainly don't want to pay $500 for a piece of equipment that the club will let you use. She's got a couple of pieces there.
One of the things, if you don't want to do treatments on your hive, you can do treatment-free beekeeping. And one of the strategies is using a drone comb, as opposed to, sorry, this is up straight from the shed. This is just a regular frame with foundation. And this is the normal size that a bee would use, the comb, or not the comb, the cell size, where drone brood, the cell size is larger. And because of the life cycle matches a drone more, the mite and the drone life cycle matches more. So mites like to lay their eggs in drone brood. So if you put some of these in your hive, the bees will lay all their drone brood here, and you don't need that many drones for sure. And so then you just take them out, feed them to the chickens, and you're throwing away the mites. And that's just one strategy. Another strategy would be to give brood breaks and that sort of thing. anyway.
So, and we really have gone over, I'm sorry, and we can't, you can tell, we can talk about this for a long, long time, because there is so much to bees. How they build is fascinating. They are the best architectures in the world. They, the cell size, just to watch them build out, to see what they do, to know what different ones are, to watch the larvae, to see in 21 days it go from an egg to a bee, and then through its cycle. So, it's okay.
Trivia for the day is their cell size. It's horizontal. When they put honey in there, they have to let it sit there for a while so it can evaporate. The water will evaporate, and when the water is below 16%, they cap it over and it's right. But it doesn't ever fall out because of the 11-degree angles of the cell.
Thank you.
Let's please see Ann and Debbie to describe. And then we talked about your full classes in May, right?
Yeah, we did. In May, we haven't scheduled a date.
Okay, and then, so all folks would have to do is join the club, and then they would have access.
They don't have to join.
No, and it's really, it's a great day. You learn the basics and you get to do, we've got hive inspections, you get to see everything from start to finish. So it's really worth looking at, and it's advertised on our Facebook, and sometimes it winds up in the shopper or the TV, so come and see us.
Is that a one credit class?
That's actually something, we don't have credits for that yet, but I know
We just started our partnership with SWOCC, and so it's just what loves that.
And you said you're gonna stand, right? So you
Well,
just need to press.
no,
Do you want to sit?
I can sit, I think.
That's probably.
Will that be enough for you?
I think so.
Okay.
Am I on the screen?
Yeah.
Enough?
Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, and
well,
I'm pressing the space bar to
just
move.
press the
ahead.
space bar, yeah. All right. Well, we are transitioning now to our second speaker. And I think this is just a perfect balance of these two levels of expertise that we have, you know, one in the honeybee population, and then the other understanding about our indigenous population of bees and how we can support them through our native species, things that they love. So it is my pleasure to introduce Darcy Grahek, who owns and runs Stillwater Native Nursery down in Bandon. So please, let's give her a round of applause until we get started.
Well, hello, thank you for having me today. I am a Lakota person. My mother was born at the Standing Rock Reservation. And growing up, I think maybe we got a different value system in some ways. I grew up in the Siskiyous, and we used to come to the coast with my dad. He had business over here. The amount of wildflowers that used to exist across landscapes was incredible, way more than now. We would pick fistfuls of flowers for my mom, something I would never do now. And she knew the name of every single flower. So we knew these were important. And in the Lakota culture, our children learn plants are the first teacher. You learn from the plant, and it's kind of come full circle now. In my years of working with native plants, it's for sure that I learn more now from the plants than I do from any books. So I'm not a bee expert at all, but native plants, angiosperms, the ones that flower and produce a seed or fruit, can only reproduce with the help of bees. And so that is why they're native bees that they evolved with, which is why I call this talk symbiotic bees. It's a symbiotic relationship. The native bees support the ecosystem that we're in. So this is a slide of a bee from 51 million years ago. It was about 150 million years ago that the continents began to separate. And by 100 million years ago, hop, skip, and a jump, they were separated enough that each species continued to evolve on its continent independent of other continents and species. So we have this long evolution of bees. And here on our North American continent, the native bees and the native plants evolved together to have a mutually beneficial relationship, with the bee partners providing the excellent pollination service that allows the flowering plants to successfully reproduce. We have a lot of bell-shaped flowers here on the South Coast. Salal, cranberry, huckleberry, madrone, manzanita. I mean, I can go on and on. Those bell-shaped flowers are hard to pollinate. Blueberries. So we have a blueberry patch, and we did bring in hives one year to see if that would help with our blueberry pollination. But I think honeybees really love to pollinate trees, and they would just go up out of the blueberry patch and head for the nearest madrone tree, which seemed to be their favorite. And so they didn't. The bumblebees have the ability to do buzz pollination or sonification, where they vibrate their wings at a speed that creates a negative ion, and it draws the positive ion of the pollen out of the flower. That's why they get used in tomato greenhouses in Canada. So let's see. Over the last 90 million years, there's an evolution of specialized tongues, mouth parts, buzz pollination, special leg hairs, cool season workers, and survival strategies. That is what our native bees contain after all these years of evolution. So there are about 4,000 native bee species in the United States. That number is growing all the time as we're discovering new species. Thanks to the Oregon Bee Atlas, which is part of OSU, we know that there's more than 700 species native to Oregon. We haven't figured out what they all are yet. We're still discovering new bee species. The solitary nature of most native bees is there's 90% that are mostly solitary. They're not in hives, and they're unlikely to sting. I have two pictured here on this slide. I have the green metallic sweat bee and the leafcutter bee. Both of those live here at the coast. They're excellent pollinators. The leafcutter bee you would really want to have in your garden. Both of these bees are also a managed species. They don't use the native one. They use a different species, but they use them for crop pollination because they're so good and so specialized in certain crops. We call bees that are not from this continent or plants or anything. It's the scientific term is exotic. It come from a different continent. So in Oregon, the smallest bee is the Perdita minima, the fairy bee. They're less than 2 millimeters. You might not even notice them. And they're often found in arid, sandy areas. They would be found around here because we have sand. We have the sand dunes, which is actually bee habitat. The large bee is a carpenter bee about 1 inch long. We don't have any carpenter bees that big, but we do have a lot of carpenter bees because we have forest. So along with the bumblebee queens, the carpenter bees are the largest of the native bees in Oregon. So an incredible diversity of bees allows for an incredible diversity of flowers. Some can only be pollinated by a specialist species. Around 30% of native bees are specialists, where they pollinate a certain flower. So mason bees, if you have an orchard, you might call these orchard bees. This is a bee that comes out early in the spring, and it works in cool temperatures, cooler than honeybees. Bumblebees and mason bees both work in fairly cool temperatures. They use mud to make their cell divisions when they lay their eggs. The males will hatch out first and then the females. I plant a lot of meadow foam under our apple orchard because meadow foam is something that blooms right before the apples. And so you're already feeding the bees that you want to attract. I'm always trying to attract more bees to certain areas. So these are super pollinators. They have a 95% pollination rate compared to just 5% for honeybees. Honeybees and bumblebees are generalists, and they pollinate a lot of things, but maybe not as well as something like this mason bee. A single mason bee can pollinate 12 pounds of cherries where it might take 60 honeybees. Of course, honeybees have the numbers. So these emerge in early spring and they work in temperatures as cool as 55. So roughly 70% of native bees live in the ground in unmulched areas with exposed dirt. Now, if you know me or anything about the work I do, I am the cardboard and mulch queen. We don't use pesticides at all, ever. But we also believe that you should give people the tools on how to not use pesticides. Cardboard and mulch is really a good tool to get rid of weeds or weedy plants. You can even use it on gorse. Doesn't work on ivy or blackberries, but we have something else for that. So the thing is, once you mulch that ground, it's not going to work for these native bees that live in holes. Maybe a rodent hole, or maybe if it's a minor bee, they dig their own holes. These holes right here show maybe a rodent tunnel was here. And what you see is they're like little cannolis, but they're little tubes, and it's a solitary bee that has made a number of laid a number of eggs in these tubes. Each tube, everywhere there's an egg, they put a little bee bread. It's made of pollen and nectar. And then they seal that tube off and lay another egg, and they'll do 10 or 12 of those. This is a mason bee house. About 30% of bees are cavity nesters, like the mason bee. They would nest in dead trees, pithy stems, or abandoned beetle holes. People love to take care of bees. I think it's something in our nature, or it's just natural for us. But if you're going to house a bee, if you're going to have a bee's house or a hive of any kind, you become responsible. So these bees have pathogens too. They have viruses, they have mites and funguses and things. So there's tube liners that they sell, and that those should be cleaned out every year if you're going to keep bees in a way like this. So this slide is a bumblebee cycle. She lives 1 year. That's it. So what we want to look at is that this in the middle, we'll see her in the spring. You'll see a queen. She'll be bigger than the other ones, although the first bees that come out are often small. The queen will be looking for a hole, or some hole that she can climb into and build her nest where she's going to brood. She broods like a chicken on eggs. So she uses wax flakes from her body and actually creates wax cups. The first wax cup she creates, she will go and gather nectar. She needs a nectar flower for that first one. She will make that nectar cup for herself. And these bees have a second stomach. So she's going to fill that nectar cup, and that's going to be what she lives off while she broods those first eggs. She can't leave. She has to keep them warm. They'll vibrate their wings to help keep them warm. So you can see in early summer, she's found a little hole under a log or a rock, and she's in there, and she's got her wax cup with her bee tongue in there, so she has something to eat. She's sitting on eggs, which are also in a wax cup. Now you can see that she's getting bigger and bigger. Now she's got 4 wax cups. And then pretty soon, by late summer and fall, her daughters are actually helping raise the bees. And she may even produce queens that neighbor right next to her. And so they are considered a semi-social bee. And I don't know what bee people are calling you guys to get that isn't honeybees, but I think it's probably bumblebees, because like I said, like 90% of the bees, native bees, are solitary, and you would never find them in a swarm. So the life cycle, that queen that comes out in the spring is responsible, and she alone, for keeping those bees, those eggs warm enough to hatch. And then if it gets hot late in the summer, the queen will also, or the workers will be responsible for keeping the eggs cool, because if they're in the ground and they get hot, they won't hatch. So then so at the end of the summer, this is the completion of their year, they're going to lay queens, and the queens are going to go out, and you'll see them, and they look shiny, brand new. Like if a bumblebee has black velvet, it's just the cleanest. It's like a brand new car, it'll never look like that again. So she will go out looking for a place to winter, and dead leaves somewhere in your yard, some corner of your yard, can shelter a lot of insects, good insects. Bumblebees are just one of them. And then in the spring, they might come out with these warm temperatures. We had one in our garage looking for something the other day. You'll hear them and they're out foraging. They're going to get something to eat. And pretty soon they're going to choose their first nest. So the end of the season, they're able with nutrition to shift what they're producing and produce the males and the new queens. So here's a bigger picture. The native species and the flowers evolved together. The length of a bee's tongue often dictates which flower can sustain them. So both honeybees and bumblebees have long tongues, but there's all kinds of different mouth parts and tongue lengths on bees. So in a series of studies by A.D. Bryan, he's kind of famous for studying bees, it was found that the eggs laid by this bombus queen, 71% will hatch. And of these larvae, 75 will go on to become pupa. And of these pupa, just 90% will hatch out. So that ends up being only 40%, 47% of the eggs laid are going on to produce those adult bumblebees. So it's really important. You can see the eggs in the blow up. Those are underneath her and she's sipping out of that nectar cup. So declines in bumblebee or bombus species is pretty scary. The American bumblebee is one that was common around here, as well as the Western bumblebee. When cranberries were studied in the 1970s by Oregon State University, there were 4 bumblebees pollinating cranberries. Western bumblebee was one of them. I don't know if the American was one. So that one's also seems to be going missing. So the American bumblebee was kind of all over the United States and has vanished from 8 states, including Oregon. So researchers have traced these bumblebee declines back to the multiple threats that include pesticides, habitat loss, climate change, diseases, and competition from non-native honeybees. So states, we're going to take kind of one of these, each of these at a time. States with the most significant dip in bee numbers have the largest increases in the use of pesticides like neonicotinoids, insecticides, and fungicides. That's per Live Science article. So this chart, it only goes to not even 2015. We knew back then something was wrong. So here's a 20-year study of neonicotinoids and how we're increasing their use and using more and more for these crops. So they're systemic. They accumulate in pollen and nectar, the neonics do. They persist in the environment because they're water soluble. They cause chronic long-term harm to pollinator numbers, honeybees and native bees. They cause paralysis, impaired navigation, reduced reproduction, and death. They're really bad. And I had thought maybe that they had banned neonics more than they have. I was wrong. I looked it up. And in Live Science, I learned that the neonicotinoid pesticide kill-off of bumblebees, you might remember, it happened in Wilsonville at a Target parking lot. And they had sprayed the linden trees, which are not a native tree, but bees love linden trees. And 50,000 bees, it's the largest kill-off that they know of in the United States. 50,000 bumblebees hit the ground, dead. So there's been a partial ban. They've banned neonics from linden trees and 2 or 3 other tree species. Portland, I think, has banned it completely. And I think Eugene is just don't use neonics there. I think they've banned it completely. So, so this is a really dangerous chemical. And you'd think, well, we're Coos County, it's probably not so bad here. No, they use them in the forests too. So if you think about a hill that's been logged and then they're going to spray it maybe, or maybe it's just treating a forest with an aerial spray, and the water that comes down off of that, and this is a water soluble chemical, only about 5 to 10% of the chemical stays on where it's supposed to be. The rest is dissipated into the environment, whatever that means. So here's where we get to the numbers game. The average lifespan of a honeybee is 2 to 5 years. and she can lay 200,000 eggs a year. I think that's why they're not in more trouble, is because they're so fast at reproducing. So I think 60% is kind of the number I hear about of hives lost. But they're able to persist because there's just so many of them. So a healthy bumblebee queen, healthy means she's getting the nutrition she needs. And she's not been bothered with pesticides, and she has habitat that's safe. So she can produce 200 to 400 eggs per year. We know they don't all make it to adulthood. It depends on available forage. So her health really depends on that. So we have this ratio of honeybee to bumblebee. It's like 500 to 1 of what the queen is going to produce. So if the honeybee hives travel into an area where there's only so much forage for bumblebees or any native bees, that's not good. It's good if honeybees, well, there's a study, we'll get to that part. So as generalist feeders, honeybees can use most flower shapes. They're really good at pollinating almost anything, but they arrive in numbers that can overwhelm a small patch. So we're talking habitat. Honeybees can outcompete wild bees by depleting the common resources. If 10,000 bees show up to a spot of 5-spot flowers, you know, that might be what's blooming right then. They can overwhelm that. But it's because the flower-rich biodiverse habitats have been lost. So there was a lot more floral abundance than what we find now. So in homogeneous, that means not very great habitat. Homogeneous agricultural landscapes, maybe lots of hay fields, a cornfield, you know, whatever we do, barns, and then we're going to spray this area because we don't want weeds to grow and contaminate our grass crop. Those are homogeneous agricultural landscapes. There's little diversity, and of the flowering plant species that bees can use. Adding a honeybee hive in that case can reduce bumblebee abundance by 81%. That's a really compromised situation. Whereas a heterogeneous landscape with plant species richness, lots of biodiversity, can help offset that impact. So I would say the responsibility in my mind, if we're going to do honeybees, let's provide a lot more flowers so that the impact that the native bees might feel is not as significant. This information was from basic and applied ecology. So the introduced pathogens. The University of Illinois scientists conducted the first long-term genetic study of Nosema bombi, which is a key fungal pathogen of honeybees and bumblebees. Bombus occidentalis, which is the western bumblebee, is one of several bombus species experiencing steep population declines. That's the one that we used to have for cranberry bogs. It's not showing up anymore. We're not seeing that bee. So the results of the study showed that Nosema bombi was present as early as 1980s, well before the species of bumblebees started to go missing. So then they realized the infections in large-scale commercial bumblebee pollination operations coincided with infections and declines in wild bumblebees. So commercial bees are not just honeybees. Bumblebees are such good pollinators that a lot of our tomatoes come from greenhouses in Canada. They're using the bumblebees because they are the very best pollinators. They have that buzz pollination or sonification. They can get that tomato pollen to come out and get fruit to set really well. So that's good pollination, means the fruit really set. You're going to open that apple and it's going to have a bunch of seeds in it, not just one. You're going to have a strawberry that's nice and big and round, not kind of a shape and lumpy mess. That's not good pollination. We want good pollination. These bees that are managed by humans, humans are not that great at managing bees. I'll just say that. There's places that we could probably do better. When we get commercial about it, then we're going for the profit rather than what's best for the bee. So these commercially managed bumblebees contaminated the wild populations, and some of them, like the western bumblebee, were really susceptible to the Nosema bombi. So, and we're not sure which other ones. So this is still unfolding, but it's a real sad story about traveling bees can travel their diseases. So habitat loss and degradation, of course, that's probably one of the bigger problems next to pesticides. Housing and urban development. What do we do when we put in 20 houses? We put in, I don't know, hundreds of square feet of lawn. Lawn is zero for pollinators, a big zero. It, not only that, but they use chemicals on it. So now it's even a really negative. It's minus habitat. It's terrible. In case you don't, if you can get rid of some of your lawn and replace it with any kind of flowering thing for bees, you're doing a great service to the world. So forestry practices and agricultural practices, scraping things off. Although I must say bumblebees do really well. They're a forest bee, clear cuts. And I actually went on a field trip at OSU when I was becoming a master naturalist. We went to a forest and they showed us that bumblebees were doing well there because there's a lot of bare ground. There's a lot of stumps. They could find holes. They did well. That was a good, and it would last for about 14 years. And then the canopy of those forests that are tree plantations, the canopy closes and then there's no more flowers. So the bees kind of have to move around, but that's their style anyway. In this picture, what you see is what should be a big open meadow full of flowers almost year round. And this is gorse. And gorse is an exotic. It's not from here. So it blooms 10 months of the year. Honeybees actually like to pollinate gorse. They recognize that they're from the same continent. But when the gorse fills this up as a monoculture, we lose the resources that would have been there. So the invasive plant species follow us humans in our activity and actually cause a lot of the problem of lost habitat. Climate change is one that we were hoping that wasn't going to be the deal, but it's affecting the pollinators with warm temperatures, long droughts, false springs. In 2025, the results of this 20-year-long study showed that 72.4% decline in flying insect abundance in a remote Colorado mountain meadow. So that part, that's the important part. It was far away from civilization. There was nothing around, no spray, nothing that should have been affecting these pollinators. And so the only thing it could have been is the changing climate. That was the only variable. So this was kind of really bad news to learn. It was a long study. I mean, 20 years, scientists are thorough. So we can do a lot to offset the loss. We can plant habitat, make habitat wherever you go. There's some excellent new citizen activist organizations leading the way in restoring habitat in our own yards. Homegrown National Park is one of them. You can get on the map, on my nursery's on the map. What it's doing is really aiming to get rid of the lawn. And they provide a ton of public information about what to do. And eventually they're recording all these bee sites or habitat sites, bees and other pollinators. And they're going to eventually have 20 million acres that's been restored, is no longer lawn. And the belief is that they may have a voice at the highest level when we get that big. We have to have a voice. Right now, we're a bunch of single people and beekeepers going, hey, there's a problem, and we can't get anybody's attention. But if we're a body that's large, then that could change. So grow diverse. Oh, the other one is pollinator pathway, which is new. And in Bandon, we're doing South Coast pollinator pathway. Every town kind of does their own flavor of that. So you can check out our website. I think the resources are on the back of the piece of paper you got. And it'll kind of show you how to grow in a way that will really help the bees. There's also a big art show on native plants and pollinators in Bandon this year. So we're just trying to make a big splash, how to get on the pollinator pathway. Even if you don't have a yard, you can help out with another habitat. So grow diverse native bee-friendly flowers, reduce or eliminate pesticides, protect existing habitat from invasive species, leave a wild corner in a yard, in part of your yard, somewhere if you can. If the neighbors are going to complain, make sure it's out of their sight. You don't want to cause problems, but where the leaves can fall and things can build up and sticks and brush, that's where the bumblebees are gonna be, and a lot of the other native bees too, and some good and beneficial insects. Eliminate as much lawn as possible. And spread awareness, tell your neighbors what you're doing, get a sign. There's a couple of signs shown here. So anyway, thanks for being a pollinator person and for being here tonight. Thanks.
All right, so this section, we know we are at 7, we have a little bit of technical delay at the start, but we want to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions, as we presenters. So I'll come around with a microphone. If any of you want to ask either Debbie or Ann or Darcy any questions. Thanks. I have 2 quick questions for Darcy. If you could name just a couple of plants that you would recommend I plant. I have a lot of shade, and so I kind of grow flowers and maybe some do that rock, like Oregon wildflowers and things. So a couple of plants that I could plant that are good. I don't have great green thumb. So, and then also the mason bee houses.
Mhm.
I've made a bunch of those in my life, and I've given them to people for presents, and to my knowledge, no one has ever moved into my mason bee house. If you have any recommendations about where they should be put or maybe.
Okay, regarding the mason bees, is the whole size exact?
I used to drill it.
Well, these bees know within
So what do you
16th of
want?
an inch. I don't have that memorized, but it's really easy to find.
Okay.
So I know you've got to get the hole the right size. It's like with birdhouses. The bird knows if the hole is too big, the predator can get in. So they're very picky about that. And as far as plants, diversity is always the key. So what I would do if I were you is I would find a list of shade plants. If you email me and say, send me a list of shade plants, I will. Flowering shades, yeah, they want to be flowering. And plant a sequence of bloom. So planting one thing that's going to bloom once and feed a bee for a week is not as good as planting 3 things that are going to bloom every 2 weeks for 6 weeks. You're feeding bees for a much longer time that way. Thanks.
That multi-bag, is that if you don't put cardboard under it, the leaves are good, but the multi-bag, so.
Right, leaves are breaking down. They're going to break down in one season. The mulch is going to keep that bee from getting into a hole. So unless they can find a mousy hole or something, the mulch is kind of a barrier. It's considered a barrier. They like bare dirt, and that's why they like clear cuts, the bumblebees. And that's why they like the beach. The minor bees at the beach are insane. So, so the mulch is you need to have areas where there's not mulch.
So they'll be eventually cross into mat,
No, not if your soil's healthy. I'm watching under one of my trees right now, and the earthworms come up and they start getting pieces and they start pulling them down to the ground. And then the life in the soil, if you have healthy soil that hasn't been sprayed with Roundup, there's a lot of life in the soil, and those leaves that I have are almost completely broken down now, and that is on top of lawn. So, so no, they'll break down.
Any other questions? All right, last chance.
Yeah. So, we have what I think are yellow jackets. But then I know some beekeeper things look a lot like that, yellow jackets, bee. How am I gonna know this?
So bees evolved from wasps. We're back in that 100 million years ago. So wasps or hornets, yellow jackets, mud daubers, all those, they don't have any hair. They're not pollinators, so there's no fuzziness. That leafcutter bee has a ton of hair on her belly because she's going to get a lot of that pollen. That's how she's moving it around. And so bees move the pollen in different places. Your yellow jackets have 0 hair on, and that's how and they're meat eaters. They're meat, and native bees are fuzzy, and they're vegetarian, and they're nice. It would be a total accident if they pollinated. I've seen them go on manzanita bells and chew through the side of it to get the pollen's nutritious. And they were hungry within the spring and they chew holes right through it to get the pollen. They're not sharing that pollen with anything and it's not gonna stick to them like it does with bumblebees and honeybees.
All right, I have two questions. So one, if I did bring money with me and I want to buy a raffle ticket for one of the bee boxes out there, how do I get in contact with one of y'all to do that? Okay, Coos Beekeepers at gmail.com, and then you also have a Facebook page, right? Coos County Beekeepers, okay, excellent. And then Darcy, if we wanted to visit your nursery, what is the best way for us to come out and see you and get some great advice on what to populate our lawn?
So I recommend making an appointment.
Okay.
I was open on Fridays and Saturdays, but we've had some changes this year and I'm working with interns and kind of refocusing. So make a call, email, text, tell me when you want to come. Most days I'm open to that. If you would go on my website and look at what plants I have, you might get an idea of what you're interested in. Send me a list. I'm really happy when people send me a plant list. I'm thinking of this and I can give them, I can say, you're in the shade. That's not gonna work. Or you're in the wind, you know, like where we live. So, yeah, and then just shoot me an email. My website is stillwaternativesnursery.com. My email's info@stillwaternatives. I think my business card's on the corner.
There's still business cards there, nursery that not wrapping around.
Yeah, happy to make an appointment for you.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, and we can have that done.
Great. So we're excited about that. And then she also mentioned that, any SWOCC students learn about the rate. Make sure to find those down. Down.
Well, and Darcy, I appreciate you talking about it too, because we're bringing honeybees on campus, and we know that there are a lot of really wonderful opportunities, with that. But we also want to be mindful of making sure that we build up enough and plant enough.
Increase
so
the
it's
floral
not
resources.
enough.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what we were talking about. This sounds like a good project for our agro program.
Mhm.
So, I personally have learned a lot from all of you this evening, a lot to think about. I cannot wait to learn more. Y'all feel the same way? We look forward to being able to do more like this and learn from all the experiences that y'all bring. And thank y'all for coming out today. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah,
Have so much to ruminate on right
I know, and
It's
and
good.
it's contentious,
now. Well, no, I think
But-
that, I think that you handled that really nicely because we were talking about, we knew there was controversy.
yeah.
But knowing all of that, I
Yeah.
think is gonna help us plan for this.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
that
Add
everybody
floral
is
and
happy and
diverse,
healthy. Yep.
diverse floral abundance.
Yeah,
That is gonna be what.
yeah. So I'm
Makes it better.
sure that Maria will be reaching out to you when
Yeah,
she gets
yeah.
back so that we can also
Yeah,
have a plan so that
yeah,
the
yeah. She
honeybees
and I have
are
already
healthy.
talked about it a little
Perfect,
bit.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
seen you, since I was in middle school, you were doing that.
Really familiar, tell me your name, Lucas. Lucas, yeah,
My sister too.
yeah, Cheyenne.
Yep.
Look at Cheyenne.
Well,
I
thank you
didn't
all
know
for
Cheyenne.
joining us out there in Curry, and we look forward